the Whispering Willow and the Starlit Crown. Once upon a time, in a land where the rivers sang and the stars danced upon the ocean waves, there was a small village nestled between rolling hills and towering willows. Among the villagers was a young girl named Lilia, whose laughter could make flowers bloom and whose heart held the warmth of the morning sun. She was beloved by all, but she carried a secret, one that tied her fate to the ancient Whispering Willow that stood at the village's edge. The willow had stood for centuries, its branches swaying to an unseen melody. Some believed it housed the spirit of the moon, while others whispered that it was a gateway to another world. Only Lilia knew the truth. On the night of her birth, a shimmering crown of stars had descended from the heavens, resting in the willow's branches. It was said that the one who reclaimed the starlit crown would be granted a single wish, one powerful enough to change the world. A fateful encounter. One fateful evening, as the first snowfall touched the earth, a mysterious stranger arrived in the village. Dressed in robes woven from the midnight sky, he carried an aura of quiet power. He approached Lilia with knowing eyes. "The time has come," he said. "The crown calls to you." Though she feared what lay ahead, Lilia knew she could not ignore the pull in her heart. Guided by the stranger, she ventured beyond the village, through mist-laden forests and over rivers of silver light. The journey was arduous, but her resolve did not waver. Trials of the Guardians. Along the way, they encountered 3 guardians, an owl of twilight, a fox of dawn, and a serpent of dusk. Each tested her courage, wisdom, and kindness. The owl asked her to solve an ancient riddle, testing her intelligence. The fox lured her into a maze, where only her compassion for lost creatures helped her find the way out. The serpent coiled around a bridge, blocking her path, but instead of fighting it, she spoke to it with kindness, recognizing its loneliness. Only by proving herself true did she earn their blessings. Beyond the trials, the landscape became strange. Trees whispered in forgotten tongues, the air shimmered with unseen forces, and shadows moved of their own accord. Time itself seemed to slow as she neared the Whispering Willow. The air hummed with anticipation. The cursed guardian. At last, they arrived at the Whispering Willow. The crown shimmered among its branches, pulsing like a heartbeat. But as Lilia reached for it, a dark wind howled through the sky. A figure emerged from the mist, a sorceress wrapped in shadows, her eyes gleaming with unfulfilled desires. She was the forgotten guardian of the Starlit Crown, cursed to guard it for eternity. "You cannot take what belongs to fate," the sorceress hissed, her voice weaving a spell into the air. Lilia stood firm. "It belongs to no one. It was given to the world, not hoarded in greed." The sorceress raised her hand, sending forth tendrils of darkness. But the blessings of the guardians shielded Lilia, their light pushing back the shadow. The sorceress, however, was not so easily defeated. A battle of wills. The willow's branches trembled as the battle raged. Lilia used the owl's wisdom, recalling ancient words that could unravel dark magic. She used the fox's speed to evade the sorceress's attacks and the serpent's patience to wait for the right moment. With each strike, the sorceress weakened, her form flickering like a dying ember. But just as Lilia thought victory was near, the sorceress unleashed a final desperate spell, sending the world around them into chaos. The stars in the sky swirled, the ground trembled, and the Whispering Willow groaned as if in pain. The shadows grew monstrous, twisting into creatures with hollow eyes and jagged claws. Lilia held her ground, but fear gripped her heart. The fox, the owl, and the serpent called to her, urging her to remember their gifts. With newfound resolve, she lifted her hands and called upon the forces that had guided her. The sky burst into radiant light as the crown pulsed, sending waves of golden energy across the battlefield. The shadows shrieked, their forms dissolving into mist. The sorceress gasped, her body unraveling into fading wisps of darkness. "No, this cannot be," she whispered, before vanishing entirely. The true wish. The Whispering Willow hummed a final song, its branches releasing tiny orbs of light that drifted into the sky. Lilia made her wish, not for power, nor for riches, but for her village to always be safe, for the land to forever be in harmony. The long road home. As the crown dissolved into the heavens, Lilia turned to find the mysterious stranger had vanished. But in her heart, she knew she had fulfilled her destiny. She began her long journey back to the village, but the path had changed. The trees whispered farewell, and the river no longer mirrored her reflection but showed glimpses of distant lands. Each step she took felt heavier, as if part of the magic she had encountered clung to her like an unseen thread. She wondered if she would ever truly return home or if she had become part of something greater than herself. When she finally reached the village, days later, everything looked the same, yet different. The people had not changed, but Lilia had. The stars in the sky seemed to hum whenever she looked upon them, and the whispering willow still stood at the edge of the village, its song forever in her heart. The eternal legend. The legend of the starlit crown was passed down through generations. Some said Lilia was blessed by the gods, others that she had become a guardian herself. But on clear nights, when the stars twinkled just so, the whispering willow still swayed, singing the song of the girl who had wished for peace instead of power. And far beyond the village, deep in the forests where magic still lingers, the fox, the owl, and the serpent watch over travelers, waiting for the next soul brave enough to seek the truth hidden among the stars. But Lilia's journey was not truly over. For the whispering willow held many more secrets, and in the depths of the night, when the wind carried strange melodies, a new adventure was always waiting to begin. The Secret of the Moonlit Zoo. Chapter 1: The Whisper of the Wind. Deep in the heart of an enchanted jungle, beyond the lands of humans, there lay a zoo unlike any other. It was called the Moonlit Zoo, a place that only appeared under the silver glow of the full moon. Unlike ordinary zoos where animals were kept behind bars, here, the creatures roamed freely under the watchful gaze of the shimmering constellations above. Among the inhabitants was Orin, a wise old snow leopard, the eldest in the zoo, who had witnessed centuries pass like autumn leaves. He often spoke of an ancient prophecy, a secret buried within the heart of the Moonlit Zoo. But the animals dismissed his tales as myths, stories meant to entertain the young cubs during quiet nights. However, on one particular evening, when the moon shone brighter than ever before, something changed. The wind carried a whisper, a warning. The magic that sustained their home was fading, and if the animals did not act, the Moonlit Zoo would vanish forever. Chapter 2: The Call to Adventure. The animals gathered at the crystal pond, the heart of the zoo, where its magical waters shimmered with reflections of different worlds. Orin, his silver coat gleaming under the moon, addressed them solemnly. "The time has come," he growled, his deep voice echoing through the trees. "The prophecy speaks of a hidden relic, the celestial key, that holds the power to restore the zoo's magic. But it has been lost for centuries, hidden beyond the gates of illusions." "Gates of illusions?" questioned Miko, a mischievous red panda, his fluffy tail twitching. "That sounds made up." "Nothing in this world is made up," Orin said with a knowing look. "Everything is waiting to be found. But the path is perilous, filled with challenges that will test your heart, mind, and spirit." Despite their fear, 4 brave animals volunteered for the journey. Miko, the red panda, swift and clever. Lyra, a golden eagle with eyes that could see beyond the ordinary. Taro, the gentle yet mighty silverback gorilla, the protector of the zoo. Zinnia, a white tiger, fierce and noble. Together, they embarked on the greatest adventure the Moonlit Zoo had ever known. Chapter 3: The Labyrinth of Shadows. The journey led them to the Labyrinth of Shadows, an ancient maze where the paths twisted like living vines, designed to deceive those who dared enter. The walls whispered doubts, preying on their deepest fears. "This way." Miko scampered ahead, but the path shifted, trapping him in a dead end. "Stay together." Lyra cried from above, using her keen eyesight to spot hidden doorways. Taro used his immense strength to break through false walls, while Zinnia kept watch, her ears flicking at the slightest movement. It was only when Miko stopped relying on speed and instead used his intelligence that they found the true exit, an archway covered in silver ivy. As they passed through, the whispers faded, replaced by the cool night air. "One trial down," Zinnia murmured, her stripes shimmering. More to come. Chapter 4: The River of Stars. Next, they reached the River of Stars, a mystical waterway where time itself flowed differently. The only way across was to step on the floating stars, but step on the wrong one, and you would be lost in time forever. "Let me go first," Lyra offered. She spread her wings and hovered above the river, scanning the stars. "The glowing ones are safe," she called. "Step only on those." One by one, they crossed, each step sending ripples of stardust into the air. But as Miko leaped onto the final star, a great shadow emerged from the water, a celestial serpent, the river's guardian. "Why do you cross my domain?" The serpent's voice coiled around them like mist. We seek the celestial key to save our home, Taro said boldly. We mean no harm. The serpent studied them, then dipped its massive head. Then pass, and take this. It gifted them a lunar crystal, saying it would guide them to their final destination, the Gates of Illusions. Chapter 5, The Frozen Expanse. Beyond the river lay a vast, frozen wasteland where the ground sparkled like crushed diamonds. The cold gnawed at their fur and feathers as they trudged forward. This place feels empty, Miko whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. But they were not alone. Glacial wraiths, spirits of lost travelers, lurked in the ice, waiting to lead them astray. Taro bared his teeth. We must move quickly. Lyra flew ahead, scouting for a safe path, while Zinnia left claw marks in the ice to guide their way back. As they pressed on, the lunar crystal glowed brighter, a beacon guiding them forward. Chapter 6, The Final Trial. The Gates of Illusion stood at the edge of reality, appearing as a swirling portal of shifting images, each one a different version of the zoo. Only those who see through deception may enter, Orin had warned. Zinnia stepped forward first, her keen instincts telling her that not everything was as it seemed. She closed her eyes and let her senses guide her, stepping through what appeared to be solid stone, and vanishing. One by one, they followed, emerging into a glowing chamber where the celestial key rested upon an obsidian pedestal. But as they approached, a shadowy figure appeared, a phantom keeper, the ancient guardian of the key. To take the key, you must answer, "What is the true heart of the Moonlit Zoo?" the figure asked. Miko's ears twitched. The animals? No, whispered Lyra. It's the magic that connects us all. Taro rumbled, it's home. Zinnia's eyes shone. It's trust. The bond we share. The phantom keeper nodded. You have passed. Take the key, and let your home shine once more. Chapter 7, The Return. With the celestial key in their grasp, they raced back as dawn threatened to break. As they placed the key into the Heartstone altar, the sky erupted into light. The magic surged back, weaving through every tree, river, and star, restoring the zoo's enchantment. Orin stood atop the highest rock, his eyes filled with pride. You have saved our world. The Moonlit Zoo will stand for all eternity. As the sun rose, the zoo began to fade from the human world once more, hidden until the next full moon. And so, the legend of the Moonlit Zoo lived on, whispered by the wind, waiting for the next great adventure to begin. The Lonely Girl and the Creature of Echo Hollow. Chapter 1, The Girl with No Friends. In the small town of Willowbrook, nestled between rolling green hills and dense forests, lived a girl named Mabel Finch. She was not like the other children. Mabel was larger than most girls her age, and because of that, she had been the target of whispers, stares, and cruel laughter for as long as she could remember. Her classmates called her names, made fun of her size, and never invited her to play. Even when she tried to be friendly, they would roll their eyes or walk away. Mabel had no friends. At school, she sat alone during lunch. On weekends, she watched from her bedroom window as the neighborhood kids rode their bikes and played games without her. Her parents, kind but busy, always told her, "One day, you'll find someone who sees how wonderful you are." Mabel was beginning to believe that day would never come. But she was wrong. Chapter 2, The Whisper in the Woods. One autumn afternoon, after another lonely day at school, Mabel wandered deep into the Echo Hollow forest, the only place where she felt at peace. Here, the trees whispered, the wind hummed, and the world didn't judge her. As she walked, kicking at fallen leaves, she heard something unusual, a tiny, high-pitched voice calling her name. Mabel. Mayabel. Over here. She froze, her heart pounding. Was someone playing a prank on her? Down here. Slowly, she looked down, and gasped. At her feet sat the strangest, most wonderful creature she had ever seen. It was small and round, like a fluffy dumpling with stubby legs and bright, golden eyes. Its fur shimmered in shades of blue and purple, and when it blinked, tiny sparks of light flickered around it. Finally, the creature sighed dramatically. I've been waiting forever for you to find me. Mabel blinked. You can talk. Of course, I can talk, the creature huffed, puffing out its tiny chest. My name is Whizzle, and I am here to change your life. Mabel gaped. But, how? Whizzle grinned mischievously. You'll see. Chapter 3, A Friendship Unlike Any Other. At first, Mabel thought she might be dreaming. But when she reached out and touched Whistle's soft fur, she knew this was real. Come on. Whistle bounced up and down. You need an adventure. Let's do something fun. Like what? Mabel asked hesitantly. Like sneaking into the Echo Hollow Fairgrounds after dark. Mabel's eyes widened. That's off limits. Rules schmules. Whistle said, waving a tiny paw. You've spent too long following rules that don't make you happy. Tonight, we break one. For the first time in her life, Mabel felt bold. So, under the light of the full moon, she and Whistle snuck past the rusted gates of the fairgrounds. They ran between abandoned rides, climbed onto carousel horses, and even snacked on leftover candy apples Whistle somehow conjured out of thin air. Mabel laughed more than she had in years. Chapter 4, The Secret Powers of Whistle. As days passed, Whistle became Mabel's closest, and only, friend. He followed her everywhere, cheering her up when she felt sad and encouraging her to try new things. But Mabel soon realized Whistle was no ordinary creature. He had powers. One day, when a group of kids threw a ball at Mabel during recess, Whistle stretched his little paw and made the ball disappear midair. The bully stared in shock as it reappeared in the principal's office. Another time, when Mabel was crying alone in her room, Whistle pressed a tiny paw to her chest, and suddenly, all the cruel words she had ever heard faded from her memory, like ink washing away in the rain. You don't need to carry their words forever, he told her. You're stronger than you think. Mabel wasn't sure if she believed that. But then something happened that changed everything. Chapter 5, The Day Mabel Stood Up. One cold winter morning, Mabel was sitting alone at lunch, as usual. But today, she wasn't sad. She was thinking about Whistle and all the fun they had shared. That's when she heard it. Mabel the wail. It was Jessica Harper, the worst bully in school. She and her friends cackled as they walked past, tossing cruel words like knives. Mabel felt her hands tremble. And then, something inside her snapped. She stood up. You think I care what you say, she said, loud enough for the whole cafeteria to hear. You've spent years making fun of me, but guess what? I'm done letting you. I like who I am. Jessica's mouth fell open. The entire cafeteria went silent. Mabel took a deep breath. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful. And Whistle, hidden in her backpack, whispered, told you. Chapter 6, The Goodbye That Wasn't. As winter melted into spring, Mabel grew stronger. She didn't just stand up to bullies, she started making friends. She helped others who felt alone. She laughed, played, and realized something incredible. She wasn't the same girl anymore. One evening, as she sat by her window, Whistle climbed onto her lap. Looks like my work here is done, he said softly. Mabel's heart clenched. What? No. You can't leave. Whistle smiled, golden eyes twinkling. I was never meant to stay forever, Mabel. You don't need me anymore. Tears filled her eyes. But, you're my best friend. And I always will be. Whistle nuzzled her cheek. Whenever you need me, I'll be right here. He tapped her chest. In your heart. And with that, Whistle faded, his form turning to stardust, swirling into the night sky. But Mabel knew he was never truly gone. Because for the first time in her life, she believed in herself. And that, she realized, was the most powerful magic of all. The Trials of Angel Mina. Chapter 1, The Angel's Mission. High above the mortal world, in a realm of golden clouds and endless light, lived a young angel named Mina. She had spent centuries as a messenger, delivering blessings and small miracles to kind-hearted souls. But Mina dreamed of something greater. She longed to rise in the celestial hierarchy, to become an archangel of light. One day, she was summoned before the Council of Eternal Radiance, where the most powerful angels resided. Azrael, the guardian of divine paths, addressed her with a solemn voice. Mina, if you wish to ascend, you must complete the trial of 10 redemptions. You must travel to the mortal world and guide 10 lost souls back to the path of goodness and light. Only then will you be deemed worthy of ascension. Mina's wings fluttered with excitement. This was her chance. I will do it, she vowed, bowing her head. But she did not yet realize how difficult her journey would be. Chapter 2, The First Test, The Thief's Regret. Mina's first mission took her to a bustling city where crime lurked in every alley. There, she found Liam, a street thief who had spent years surviving by stealing from others. Mina took on a human form, appearing before Liam as a weary traveler. When he tried to snatch her coin purse, she grabbed his wrist, her eyes shining with celestial warmth. "Why do you steal?" she asked gently. Liam sneered. "Because the world takes from me first." Mina saw the pain behind his words. That night, she followed him and discovered the truth. He stole not for greed, but to feed his younger sister, Elise. Moved by his devotion, Mina helped Liam find honest work at a bakery. In time, he abandoned his life of crime, choosing kindness over survival by harm. One soul redeemed. Chapter 3, The Second Test, The Bitter Widow. In a quiet countryside, Mina found Margaret, an elderly woman whose heart had turned to stone after the death of her husband. She spent her days shutting people out, drowning in bitterness. Mina, disguised as a traveling storyteller, visited Margaret and shared tales of love and loss. One story, about a man who waited in the afterlife for his beloved, made Margaret weep. She realized that her husband would never want her to spend her remaining years in misery. With Mina's guidance, Margaret reopened her heart, rekindling old friendships and finding joy in life once more. Two souls redeemed. Chapter 4, The Third Test, The Tyrant Merchant. In a prosperous town, Edgar, a wealthy merchant, exploited the poor and cared only for gold. Mina disguised herself as a beggar, approaching his grand shop for help. When he cruelly turned her away, she cast a minor celestial spell. For one night, Edgar would live as a pauper. He awoke in the streets, hungry and alone, experiencing the very suffering he had ignored. By dawn, he was desperate for kindness, and Mina, now back in angelic form, confronted him. "Do you see now?" With tears in his eyes, Edgar vowed to change. He used his wealth to build homes for the poor, ensuring that none would suffer as he had in that one fateful night. 3 souls redeemed. Chapter 5, The Fourth and Fifth Tests, The Feuding Brothers. Mina's next trial led her to Nathan and Samuel, 2 brothers who had not spoken in 10 years due to a bitter inheritance dispute. Mina, appearing as a lost traveler, befriended them separately. She whispered into their dreams, showing them memories of their childhood, when they had once been inseparable. On their mother's death anniversary, Mina orchestrated a chance meeting. Seeing each other again, burdened with years of resentment, they hesitated. "I miss you," Nathan finally admitted. "Me too," Samuel whispered. They embraced, and the past melted away. 5 souls redeemed. Chapter 6, The Sixth Test, The Liar's Redemption. In a lively town, Mina met Olivia, a woman who manipulated people with her lies. Mina crafted an enchanted mirror, one that reflected not a person's image, but their true self. When Olivia looked inside, she saw the faces of everyone she had deceived, faces full of pain. Stricken with guilt, Olivia resolved to change. She became a truth seeker, dedicating her life to honesty and justice. 6 souls redeemed. Chapter 7, The Seventh and Eighth Tests, The War General and the Coward. In a land torn by war, Mina encountered General Alden, a ruthless warrior, and Felix, a deserter consumed by fear. To Alden, she showed the faces of those who had perished under his command. To Felix, she revealed that courage was not the absence of fear but the will to stand for what is right. Alden laid down his sword. Felix took up a healer's staff. 8 souls redeemed. Chapter 8, The Ninth Test, The Selfish Prince. Prince Darius, spoiled and vain, believed the world revolved around him. Mina, disguised as a court jester, entertained him with stories of great rulers, not of their wealth, but of their selfless deeds. When a famine struck his kingdom, Mina guided him to aid his people, teaching him that true leadership meant serving others. 9 souls redeemed. Chapter 9, The Final Test, The Hopeless Man. For her final trial, Mina faced Leon, a man who had lost all hope after a tragedy. No words, no miracles seemed to reach him. Instead, Mina simply sat with him. Day after day, she stayed, showing unwavering kindness. And one evening, when the stars shone brightly, Leon finally spoke. "Thank you for not giving up on me." He chose to live, to heal. 10 souls redeemed. Chapter 10, Ascension. Mina returned to the celestial realm, her heart full. She had passed her trial. Azrael and the council welcomed her with radiant smiles. She had earned her place as an archangel. But Mina had changed. "I wish to return to the mortal world," she declared. "Not as a test, but because they still need me." The council, moved by her devotion, granted her wish. And so, Mina descended once more, not as a mere angel on trial, but as a guardian of lost souls, forever guiding them toward the light. The Midnight Passage of Anna. Chapter 1, The Hidden Door. In the quiet town of Ravenhurst, nestled between rolling hills and thick, whispering forests, lived a girl named Anna Everly. She had always been a dreamer, longing for something beyond the ordinary life she lived. Though her days were filled with routine, her nights were different. Every night at exactly 12 a.m., something strange happened in her room. A hidden compartment, a dark passage, would appear on the far wall of her bedroom, just beneath her bookshelf. A black archway would shimmer for exactly 1 minute, revealing a swirling doorway into the unknown. It had always been there, as far as she could remember, but Anna had never dared to enter. Until one fateful night. Curiosity gnawed at her as she lay in bed, watching the passage shimmer in the darkness. With a deep breath, heart pounding, she stepped forward and crossed the threshold. The moment she did, the air shifted, and the world around her changed. Chapter 2, A Kingdom Beyond Time. Anna found herself standing in a world unlike anything she had ever seen before. The sky was a deep violet, stars swirling in moving constellations. Floating islands hovered above a vast landscape of glowing rivers, towering crystal forests, and cities suspended in the sky. Before she could take in the full magnificence of the place, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "You must be new here," said a figure stepping out from behind a tree. It was a young man with silver hair and striking blue eyes, dressed in elegant yet battle-worn clothing. "Who are you?" Anna asked, trying to steady her voice. "I am Kale, guardian of the starlit realms," he said. "And you just stepped into Sealstera, a kingdom hidden between the hours of reality and dreams." Anna's mind whirled. A kingdom that only existed beyond midnight. It sounded impossible. Yet, here she stood, breathing in the cool, magic-tinged air of this place. Chapter 3, The Prophecy of the Lost One. Kale led Anna through the grand city of Elendor, where towers gleamed like stardust and streets paved with obsidian hummed with energy. At the heart of the kingdom stood a towering castle, where the air buzzed with enchantments. Inside, an ancient oracle, Lady Myria, awaited them. "You are the lost one," the oracle whispered, her golden eyes gleaming. "The one fated to restore the balance of Sealstera. The one who holds the key to the Midnight Passage." Anna blinked. "Me? But I don't even belong here." Lady Myria smiled knowingly. "Destiny is rarely wrong, child. There is a darkness stirring in Sealstera, the Shadowborn, ancient creatures that consume light, threaten to destroy our world. And you are the only one who can stop them." Chapter 4, The Journey Begins. Despite her disbelief, Anna could feel something shifting inside her, something awakening. Kale promised to guide her, and together they set off to find the Moonstone Relic, the only artifact capable of banishing the Shadowborn. Their journey led them through perilous landscapes. The echoing cliffs, where voices of the past whispered secrets. The mirage marshes, where illusions played tricks on the mind. The luminous abyss, a cavern of glowing crystals that pulsed like a heartbeat. The starbound temple, a sacred place hidden within the heart of a floating mountain. The forbidden spire, a tower said to hold the knowledge of Celestera's ancient rulers. Each step brought Anna closer to understanding her connection to this world, and to Kale. He was more than just her guide, there was something unspoken between them, something neither of them dared to name. Chapter 5, The Shadowborn's Arrival. As they neared the sacred temple where the Moonstone Relic lay hidden, darkness consumed the sky. The Shadowborn had found them. The creatures emerged from the void, monstrous figures made of swirling darkness, their hollow eyes fixed on Anna. Kale stood protectively before her, blade drawn, but even he could not hold them off alone. Anna felt a force stir within her, a power unlike anything she had known. Raising her hands, she unleashed a brilliant light that sent the creatures reeling. The realization hit her. She was the key. She had always been the key. With the last of her strength, she and Kale reached the Moonstone relic. As she touched it, a pulse of energy surged through Sealstera, driving the Shadowborn back into the abyss. The kingdom was saved. Chapter 6, A Choice Between Worlds. As dawn approached, Anna knew the Midnight Passage would soon close. She could return to her world, to the life she had known, or she could stay. Kale turned to her, his expression unreadable. Sealstera needs you, Anna. I need you. Her heart ached. She had found adventure, purpose, and something she never expected, love. The passage shimmered before her. The choice was hers. Chapter 7, The Eternal Promise. Anna made her decision. She stepped forward, and took Kale's hand. The Midnight Passage vanished, sealing behind her as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Sealstera was now her home, and together, she and Kale would protect it for all eternity. As the stars above shimmered in approval, Anna knew she had found where she truly belonged. Chapter 8, The Kingdom's Future. Years passed, and Anna became more than just a keeper of the Midnight Passage. She became a ruler of Sealstera, alongside Kale. Together, they built a world where dreamers could walk among the stars, where forgotten souls found refuge, and where the past, present, and future intertwined like threads in a cosmic tapestry. Though the Midnight Passage never appeared in her room again, she knew it still existed, waiting for the next lost soul, the next dreamer, to find their way home. And when the midnight bells of Sealstera chimed, she would always remember that one choice changed her life forever. But this was only the beginning of her journey, for the stars whispered of greater mysteries waiting beyond the horizon, and Anna was ready to embrace whatever came next. The Timeless Melody. Chapter 1, The Whispering Violin. In the grand city of Valmir, where cobblestone streets glistened under golden lanterns and music filled the air, lived a young violinist named Serafina Everly. She played in the bustling town square each evening, her melodies drawing crowds and stirring hearts. But though she enchanted many with her music, her own heart remained untouched, until the night she played a song she had never written. One evening, as twilight painted the sky, her fingers moved on their own, weaving a melody that felt both foreign and familiar. The air shifted. A strange man in a midnight blue coat emerged from the shadows, his deep green eyes locked onto hers. "You played my song," he murmured. Serafina's heart pounded. I don't know this song." "You do," he said with certainty, stepping closer. "You've known it for lifetimes." And in that moment, her world began to unravel. Chapter 2, A Love Lost in Time. His name was Lucian Thorn, and he told her an impossible story. He spoke of another life, another time, centuries ago, in a world where she had once been Lady Serafina of Eldoria, and he, a wayward composer who had fallen in love with her. "You promised you would remember me," he said softly. "Every lifetime, you always do." Serafina could scarcely breathe. "This is madness." He only smiled. "Then tell me why your hands played our song tonight." A cold wind swept through the square, and for a fleeting moment, Serafina saw something, a vision of a ballroom bathed in candlelight, her in a flowing gown, Lucian reaching for her hand. And just as suddenly, it was gone. "I need time," she whispered. Lucian nodded. "Time is all we've ever had." Chapter 3, The Forgotten Letters. Determined to prove him wrong, or right, Serafina began searching through historical archives, guided by a feeling she couldn't explain. And then she found it, a stack of aged letters, sealed with a crest she did not recognize but felt intimately familiar. They were love letters. From Lucian. "From the moment I heard your song, I knew my soul had found its home. Tell me you will wait for me beyond time, and I will find you again." The ink had long since faded, but the words burned into her heart. And as she traced the letters, memories she didn't know she had flooded her mind, a secret garden, a promise whispered under moonlight, a tragedy that tore them apart. Serafina clutched the letters, breathless. It was all true. She had loved him before. And she had lost him. Chapter 4, The Curse of the Stars. Lucian revealed the rest of the truth that night beneath the celestial bridge, where the river reflected the heavens. "There was a curse," he said, voice heavy with sorrow. "We were never meant to be." Their love had defied fate, and the stars had been unkind. Each time they found one another, something tore them apart: war, death, betrayal. And yet, every lifetime, Lucian searched for her. And every lifetime, she played their song. This time will be different, she swore, gripping his hands. But even as she said it, the stars above flickered, as if warning her that destiny was not so easily undone. Chapter 5, The Clockmaker's Secret. Seeking answers, they visited Madame Isolde, an ancient clockmaker who whispered of forbidden magic and the celestial thread, the fabric of fate itself. There is only one way, she said, placing an hourglass between them. You must go back to the moment it began. A portal shimmered in the glass, revealing a time long past, Eldoria, centuries ago. If you step through, you will relive your past, Isolde warned. But be careful. Changing fate has consequences. Serafina hesitated, glancing at Lucian. Would they finally get it right? Together, they stepped through. Chapter 6, The Dance of Fate. Eldoria was just as she had seen in her dreams, grand castles, gilded ballrooms, forbidden love. She was Lady Serafina again, and Lucian was the composer whose music had stolen her heart. But this time, they would not let fate win. They altered small moments, a secret note, a changed rendezvous, a whispered warning. And yet, as the night of the tragedy neared, shadows loomed. The same forces that had torn them apart before were stirring. We must break the cycle, Lucian said. No more running. No more waiting. On the night of the grand masquerade, where history had once separated them, Serafina chose love over fear. She took his hand and led him to the garden, far from prying eyes, far from the tragedy that had once befallen them. The stars pulsed overhead, and for the first time in lifetimes, something shifted. The curse cracked. Chapter 7, A Love Beyond Time. The morning after, the world was different. No longer did the stars flicker with warning. No longer did fate claw at their love. They returned to Valmir, stepping back through time, but something had changed. Serafina no longer feared forgetting. She played their song in the square, and as Lucian watched from the crowd, she remembered every lifetime, every love, every promise. They had won. Chapter 8, The Eternal Melody. Years passed, and their love remained. No longer lost, no longer bound by time. Each night, as Serafina played her violin, Lucian would hum their song, a melody written across centuries. And though time moved forward, their love remained untouched, infinite. Some say, if you walk through the streets of Valmir at twilight, you can still hear the whisper of a violin playing a song older than time itself, a melody of love, loss, and fate finally conquered. And if you listen closely, you might just see them, Serafina and Lucian, dancing beneath the stars. The Lost Relic of Evernight. Chapter 1, The Map of Forgotten Echoes. In the heart of Blackwater Bay, where fog rolled over the ocean like whispering ghosts and the waves carried the echoes of lost legends, lived an unlikely treasure hunter named Elias Vale. Unlike the greedy fortune seekers who scoured the world for gold, Elias sought only one thing, the lost relic of Evernight, an artifact said to hold a power beyond human comprehension. For centuries, it was believed to be a myth, hidden somewhere in the Vale Islands, a place no map could chart, where reality twisted and time unraveled. But one stormy night, in a tattered bookshop at the edge of civilization, Elias found something impossible. A map that wasn't supposed to exist. It was old, inked with symbols that shimmered under moonlight, drawn on parchment that smelled of salt and stardust. And scrawled at the bottom in faded ink were 6 words. Find the relic before it finds you. Chapter 2, The Unbreakable Crew. Elias knew he couldn't do this alone. A journey to the Vale Islands required the best, those willing to stare death in the face and laugh. And so, he gathered his crew. Captain Ronan Drake, a rogue sailor who could outmaneuver the deadliest storms. Lyric Quinn, a thief who once stole the crown of Solstice from a king's vault. Marigold Mari Thorn, an alchemist who brewed potions that defied nature itself. Orion Graves, an exiled scholar who spoke languages long since forgotten. Together, they set sail on the Starfall, a ship bound for the unknown. But as they departed, a shadowed figure watched from the docks, a smirk curling on their lips. Let's see if you can outrun fate. Chapter 3, The Vale Islands. The Vale Islands were not on any map because they refused to be. As the starfall approached, the world blurred. Time fractured. The sun rose and set within moments. Islands shifted, appearing and vanishing like mirages. It was as if the ocean itself did not wish to be known. but Elias had the map. Using its cryptic symbols, he guided the crew through the labyrinthine waters. Each island held a trial, not of strength, but of wit and willpower. The first island, the Isle of Echoing Sands, mimicked the voices of the past, whispering regrets that could drive a person mad. The only way forward was to walk without looking back. Orion nearly lost himself, but Mari pulled him through just in time. The second island, the Hollow Shores, had a sea of black water that showed reflections of alternate fates, versions of themselves that had made different choices. Lyric saw a version of herself who had never left her old life behind, and for the first time, she hesitated. The third island, the Crimson Grove, held the remains of those who had come before. Skeletons sat at an abandoned feast, and as soon as the crew stepped forward, the long dead stood to greet them. The relic is not yours. A fight broke out, but these were no ordinary undead, they learned with every strike. Ronan, quick thinking, used the mirrors from their supplies to reflect light onto the specters, disorienting them long enough for an escape. As they sailed away, the sea trembled. The relic was close. Chapter 4, The Curse of the Relic. At last, they reached Evernight Isle, where the relic was said to rest. Unlike the other islands, this one did not shift or shimmer. It was still, eerily so, as if the island itself held its breath. In the heart of the jungle, beneath an ancient ruin, they found it. The relic of Evernight. It was unlike anything they expected, not gold, not jewels, but a simple black sphere, humming with an unearthly energy. Mari, ever the alchemist, whispered, "It's alive." Elias felt it before he saw it, the weight in the air, the tension in his bones. The relic was watching them. Then, the ground split apart. A force beyond understanding lashed out, visions flooding their minds. A kingdom undone by its own greed. A ship lost to time, its sailors trapped in an endless loop. A face Elias knew but could not name. The relic does not give. It takes. Chapter 5, The Betrayal. Before Elias could react, the shadowed figure from the dock stepped forward. It was Rowan Vale, his own brother, long thought dead. Funny, isn't it? Rowan mused. You spent your whole life chasing something you didn't understand. And now, it's mine. The betrayal burned deep, but Elias had no time to process it before Rowan seized the relic. The sphere pulsed once. Then, everything shattered. Chapter 6, A World Unmade. The crew awoke to chaos. The sky was cracked. The islands fractured. Time no longer moved forward, it spiraled. The relic had been a seal, a lock on something far worse. Rowan, in his greed, had broken it. They had one choice, undo what had been done. As Rowan laughed, his form began to shift. The relic had claimed him, warping him into something ancient, something not human. His body twisted, his eyes darkened. He was becoming the very thing the relic was meant to contain. Elias stepped forward, gripping his sword. You wanted power, brother. Rowan grinned, teeth too sharp. Come take it. Chapter 7, The Final Stand. The battle was unlike anything they had faced. Rowan, now more entity than man, tore through the air itself. The crew fought with everything they had, Ronan at the helm, Lyric striking from the shadows, Mari using potions to warp the very elements around them, Orion deciphering the relic's true purpose. And Elias. He listened. The relic whispered. It had never wanted to be found. It had waited for someone strong enough to return it to the void. Elias made a choice. With a final, desperate surge, he seized the relic and plunged it into the heart of Evernight Isle. The island trembled, the sky knitted itself back together. Rowan screamed as he was pulled into the abyss, his laughter echoing even as he vanished. Then, silence. The relic was gone. And the world was whole once more. Chapter 8, The Legend Lives On. The crew parted ways, but the legend of the lost relic of Evernight lived on. Some say, if you sail far enough into the mist, you can still hear the whisper of a man who loved the sea more than anything. And if you listen closely, the waves will tell you his name. Elias Vale. The man who found the unfathomable, and lived to tell the tale. The Enchanted Garden of 12 Fairies. Chapter 1, The Garden Beyond the Veil. Hidden beyond the reach of mortals, nestled between the twilight of dreams and reality, lay the celestial bloom garden, a land of eternal beauty, untouched by time. Here, in a world where flowers sang and rivers glowed with moonlight, dwelled the 12 fairies of Everdream. Each fairy was a guardian of a sacred flower, and together, they maintained the balance of magic in their enchanted paradise. But few knew that a prophecy had long whispered through the petals of the garden: when the 12th bloom fades, the garden shall fall into eternal slumber. None believed it, until one fateful night when the first petal wilted. Chapter 2: The 12 Fairies. Each fairy was bound to a flower of immense power, each embodying a unique essence of the world. Aries, guardian of the wind lily, light as the breeze, whisperer of secrets carried by the wind. Silva, keeper of the emerald fern, protector of the forests, her laughter echoed through the trees. Lunara, watcher of the moon blossom, glowing with celestial silver, guiding lost souls in the night. Seraphine, mistress of the twilight rose, her magic existed between day and night, where dreams met reality. Vespera, heir to the shadow orchid, wielding the magic of dusk, unseen yet ever present. Celestia, bearer of the star lotus, her presence was like stardust woven into silk. Noira, guardian of the onyx bloom, shrouded in mystery, her petals danced in the moon's glow. Solara, keeper of the sunflower of eternity, the golden beacon of warmth and joy. Mirabelle, protector of the crystal bellflower, whose chimes echoed through time. Eldora, watcher of the evergold vine, whose roots stretched beyond the fabric of worlds. Thalassa, mistress of the ocean bloom, whose petals held the secrets of the deep. Isolde, keeper of the frost blossom, the final guardian, whose touch carried both life and stillness. For eons, they flourished together, their garden a celestial wonder. But now, as the petals began to fall, they realized that something, or someone, was stealing the life from their world. Chapter 3: The Fading Magic. The 12 gathered beneath the Luminara tree, their most sacred sanctuary. Aries, her golden wings fluttering anxiously, placed a withered petal on the stone altar. "This was from the moon blossom," she whispered, her voice trembling. Lunara gasped. "That's impossible. My flower has never faded." "It is the beginning," Vespera murmured, eyes shadowed. "Something ancient stirs." Solara, ever the optimist, stood tall. "Then we must find the source of the decay before all is lost." Isolde, the wisest among them, turned towards the entrance of the garden. "Then we must journey beyond the veil." A hush fell over them. None had left the celestial bloom garden before. But now, they had no choice. Chapter 4: The Journey Begins. The 12 fairies embarked on a journey through the unseen pathways beyond their home. As they crossed the crystal bridge, a passage leading into the mortal world, the air grew heavy with an unfamiliar energy. They traveled through realms forgotten. The vale of echoing petals, where flowers whispered forgotten names. The twilight river, where reflections showed glimpses of possible futures. The meadow of lost wishes, where abandoned dreams grew like wildflowers. The vale of eternal mist, a place where time bent and looped, trapping wanderers for eternity. The forbidden garden, where flowers bloomed with forbidden magic, whispering secrets of the past. The dying glade, where nature itself seemed to mourn, drained of all color and life. Each realm tested them, demanding sacrifices, forcing them to face fears long buried. Celestia nearly lost herself in the mirrored field, where her own reflection whispered doubts she had never voiced. Thalassa was almost consumed by the waters of unraveling, where the sea tried to take her memories. But together, they pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth. And finally, they reached the heart of Evernight, where magic itself seemed to unravel. It was there they found the source of the decay, the Hollow Queen. Chapter 5: The Hollow Queen's Curse. A figure draped in shadows stood at the heart of a dying field, holding a single petal of light between her fingers. "You're too late," she whispered, her voice hollow yet filled with sorrow. "The garden is already fading." Seraphine stepped forward. "Why are you doing this?" The Hollow Queen turned, revealing a face eerily similar to their own. "I was once like you," she said. "A fairy of Everdream. But the world forgot me." The fairies gasped. She had been one of them. The queen's name had been Alaris, the 13th fairy, erased from their history for breaking the one rule of their kind, falling in love with a mortal. "I was cast out, and my flower was severed from the garden," Alaris whispered. "Now, I take back what was stolen from me. Chapter 6, A Choice Between Light and Shadow. The fairies knew they could not defeat her by force. Instead, Lunara stepped forward, holding out her hands. Ilaris, you were never forgotten. One by one, the fairies stepped forward, their hands glowing with the essence of their sacred flowers. They combined their magic, weaving a new bloom, one made from all of them, a symbol of forgiveness, unity, and the magic of love itself. Tears filled Ilaris's eyes as she touched the flower. Light pulsed from its core, and suddenly, the decay reversed. The withered petals returned, the air filled with the fragrance of rebirth, and the garden breathed once more. The Hollow Queen was hollow no longer. Chapter 7, The Eternal Garden. With Ilaris restored, the 12 fairies became 13 once more. They returned to the celestial bloom garden, where a new flower blossomed at the heart of their sanctuary, a flower with petals of gold, silver, and midnight, uniting all their powers. Ilaris remained with them, and though she had once been lost, she was lost no longer. Legends say that on nights when the stars shine brightest, if one listens closely near the forests of Everdream, they can hear the 13 fairies laughing, singing, dancing among the glowing petals of a paradise that will never fade. The Great Pickle Heist of Wobbleton. Chapter 1, The Town of Wobbleton's Greatest Treasure. In the peculiar little town of Wobbleton, where the streets smelled of freshly baked pies and the town square was decorated with mismatched lampposts, nobody knew why, there existed a legendary pickle. Not just any pickle, the Grand Wobbleton Pickle. A pickle so famous that people traveled miles just to catch a glimpse of it. It was displayed in a golden jar in the town museum, guarded night and day by Officer Herbert McSniff, a man so dedicated to his duty that he once arrested his own shadow for moving suspiciously. The pickle was said to grant one wish to whoever took the first bite. But no one had ever dared to eat it. Not because of the legend, but because it had been sitting in brine for 150 years, and people had their limits. That is, until Reginald P. Blunderbuss, Wobbleton's most accident-prone citizen, decided that he was going to steal it. Chapter 2, The Terribly Inept Mastermind. Reginald wasn't a criminal mastermind. In fact, he wasn't much of a mastermind at all. His most successful plan in life involved trying to juggle 3 eggs. He dropped all 3, one directly onto the mayor's bald head. But when he heard the legend of the wish-granting pickle, he knew he had to have it. His grand plan: dress up as a museum janitor. Pretend to mop the floor near the pickle. Casually swipe the jar when no one was looking. Foolproof? No. Brilliant? Also no. But it was his plan, and that counted for something. The only flaw. Officer Herbert McSniff. Chapter 3, The Great Disguise Disaster. On the night of the heist, Reginald sneaked into the museum wearing what he thought was a convincing janitor disguise, a mop on his head and a spray bottle strapped to his belt like a cowboy holster. "Excuse me," said Officer McSniff, eyeing him suspiciously. "Are you new here?" Reginald panicked. "Ah, yes. I'm Gerald Mopkins. I was hired last night." McSniff squinted. "I do the hiring." "Right. Ah, you hired me in your sleep." McSniff's left eye twitched. "I don't sleep." Reginald was sweating through his janitor's vest. But before McSniff could question him further, a loud boom echoed through the museum. Chapter 4, The Explosion That Wasn't Supposed to Happen. Across the hall, Martha Butterwhisk, Wobbleton's most enthusiastic inventor, had accidentally set off a small explosion in her attempt to create self-buttering toast. Instead, she had created butter fireworks, which shot flaming butter across the room, coating several guests. Chaos erupted. People screamed. The mayor ran in circles, yelling something about the dairy uprising. And in the midst of it all, Reginald saw his chance. With McSniff distracted, he grabbed the golden pickle jar and sprinted toward the exit. Chapter 5, The Great Chase. "Stop. Thief!" McSniff roared, slipping on a piece of buttered toast as he lunged after Reginald. Reginald, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and panic, barreled through Wobbleton's streets. But this was Wobbleton, where nothing was ever normal. His escape was anything but smooth. He crashed into Mrs. Figglebottom's wheelbarrow of turnips, sending them flying into the town fountain. He tripped over Old Man Higgins's pet turtle, which, for reasons unknown, wore roller skates. He dodged a rogue unicycle performer, who was juggling flaming pineapples, don't ask. By the time Reginald reached the edge of town, he was completely exhausted, and covered in turnip bits. That's when he heard the whistle. McSniff, riding a police goat, was gaining on him. Chapter 6, The Pickle's Big Reveal. Reginald had two choices. Get caught and spend the rest of his life as that guy who stole a 150-year-old pickle. Eat the pickle and make a wish. He chose option 2. With a dramatic flair, and a lot of turnip juice dripping off him, he unscrewed the golden jar and took a bite. The world froze. A mystical voice boomed from the heavens. Who dares awaken the power of the Grand Wobbleton Pickle? Reginald, mouth full of ancient pickle, raised a hand. MMF. I do. And what is your wish? Reginald thought long and hard. He could wish for riches, power, wisdom. But in that moment, as McSniff leapt toward him in slow motion, he wished for a way to escape. And suddenly, he vanished. Chapter 7, The Aftermath of a Stolen Pickle. Reginald reappeared on the other side of town, standing in Mrs. Tiddlewomp's bakery, right in front of a fresh tray of pastries. McSniff, who had tackled empty air, was now lying in a pile of turnips, confused and defeated. The town erupted in confusion. How had Reginald disappeared? Where had he gone? And more importantly, where was the pickle? Because when Reginald looked down, he saw nothing in his hands. The Grand Wobbleton Pickle had vanished. Some say it was absorbed into his very being. Others claim it reappeared somewhere else, waiting for the next poor fool to take a bite. As for Reginald, well, he never stole anything again. Mostly because McSniff now watched him like a hawk. But sometimes, late at night, he swore he could hear a pickle jar rattling in the distance. And he had only one thought. What if I had wished for cake? Chapter 8, The Legend Lives On. As Wobbleton slowly returned to normal, the legend of the Great Pickle Heist lived on. Tourists came from far and wide to see the empty pickle jar display, now labeled, The Pickle That Vanished. And every year, on the anniversary of the heist, a mysterious pickle jar appears in the town square for exactly 1 minute before vanishing again. No one knows why. But Reginald has a suspicion. Because every time it happens, he suddenly tastes pickles. The Silent Cipher, a detective thriller. Chapter 1, The Vanishing Man. Detective Julian Graves had seen many strange cases in his time, but nothing quite like this. It was a bitter October evening when he was summoned to Holloway Manor, a decaying estate perched on the cliffs of Blackwood Bay. The report. A man had vanished from a locked room. No witnesses, no forced entry, no trace of struggle, just a single chair in the center of the room and a coded message written on the wall in blood. The words read, "Find me before the clock stops." Graves narrowed his eyes. There was something unsettling about the scene. The dust on the floor was undisturbed, the windows bolted shut. How could someone disappear without a trace? And more importantly, who had left the message? Chapter 2, The First Clue. The missing man was Arthur Whitmore, an eccentric historian obsessed with ancient ciphers. According to his assistant, Eleanor Finch, Arthur had become increasingly paranoid in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, claiming that someone was watching him. Watching him? Graves repeated. Did he mention who? Eleanor hesitated. No. But he kept talking about a secret, something hidden in Holloway Manor. Graves examined the message again. Find me before the clock stops. His eyes flickered to the grandfather clock in the corner of the room. It was still ticking, its long brass pendulum swinging methodically. Was this clock working when you found the room? He asked. Eleanor shook her head. No. It was frozen at exactly 3:15 a.m. Graves felt a chill creep up his spine. Something happened in this room at 3:15. And whatever it was, it left no trace. Chapter 3, The Cipher. Back at his office, Graves examined Arthur's study. The place was littered with books on cryptology, ancient languages, and secret societies. But it was a single page in Arthur's notebook that caught his attention. It contained a cipher. A series of numbers and letters, arranged in a peculiar pattern. M19/X5/D14/T7/R2. Beneath it, one phrase was scrawled: "The key is buried with the past." Graves tapped his fingers on the desk. A cipher, a disappearing man, and a cryptic message. This was no ordinary case. Chapter 4: The Hidden Vault. Following the clue, Graves visited Holloway Cemetery, where Arthur's family had been buried for generations. The oldest tomb belonged to Edgar Whitmore, Arthur's great-grandfather, a man infamous for his secret dealings during the war. Graves inspected the gravestone. The inscription seemed normal, until he noticed something peculiar. The letter T in Whitmore was slightly misaligned. He pressed it. A soft click. The ground rumbled as a hidden trapdoor slid open beneath the tomb. Graves descended cautiously into the darkness, his flashlight flickering against the damp stone walls. At the end of a narrow tunnel, he found an iron door, sealed with the same cipher from Arthur's notebook. He hesitated, then carefully entered the numbers. M19/X5/D14/T7/R2. A heavy clank. The door swung open, revealing a vault filled with documents, old maps, and a single locked box. Chapter 5: The Society of the Black Veil. Inside the box was a letter from Arthur Whitmore. Graves unfolded the aged parchment, scanning the words. "If you are reading this, then I have been taken. You must uncover the truth before they erase me completely. The Society of the Black Veil will stop at nothing to protect their secret. They are always watching. The key is in the manuscript. Follow the numbers. Trust no one. The Black Veil." A name Graves had heard before. A secret organization rumored to control governments, wealth, and knowledge. Arthur had uncovered something he wasn't supposed to. And now, he had paid the price. Chapter 6: The Pursuit. Graves didn't have much time. He returned to Arthur's study, searching for the manuscript mentioned in the letter. But as he reached for a book on the shelf, a shadow moved behind him. He barely had time to react before a gloved hand grabbed his shoulder. "Detective Graves," a low voice murmured. "You're meddling where you shouldn't." Graves spun around, knocking over a stack of books. But the figure had already vanished into the night. His pulse pounded. They were watching. Chapter 7: The Clock Runs Out. He knew he was close. Following the letter's instructions, he decoded the manuscript's hidden message. The answer lies beneath the pendulum. The grandfather clock. Graves rushed back to Holloway Manor. He pried open the clock's base, revealing a false panel. Inside, a set of old documents. Letters, signed and sealed by powerful figures, outlining the existence of the Black Veil and their secret dealings. It was proof. But before he could take them, a click echoed through the room. He turned. A masked figure stood in the doorway, holding a gun. "Detective," the figure sighed, shaking his head. "You should have stopped digging." Chapter 8: The Final Move. Graves barely had time to think before the masked man fired. He dived behind the clock as the bullet shattered the wooden casing. He grabbed the heavy brass pendulum and swung it forward, knocking the gun from the man's grip. They struggled. The masked man threw a punch, but Graves ducked, driving his shoulder into his attacker's chest. They crashed into the bookshelf, sending papers flying. Then, a loud whistle echoed from outside. Police sirens. Graves smirked. "Guess you forgot, I don't work alone." The masked man turned to flee, but officers stormed the room, pinning him to the ground. As they unmasked him, Graves felt his breath catch. It was Eleanor Finch, Arthur's assistant. Chapter 9: The Truth Revealed. Eleanor had been a member of the Black Veil all along. She had betrayed Arthur, ensuring his disappearance when he got too close to their secret. But Graves had outplayed her. The documents were safe. Arthur was still missing, but now, Graves had a trail to follow. And he wasn't stopping until he found him. As he watched Eleanor being taken away, he glanced at the broken clock in the corner. 3:15 a.m. The time when it had all begun. And now, the Real chase had just begun.